Guys, I'm gonna be real. This morning I woke up with hives all over my body and swollen eyes. No, imagine you're Kit Costello, you wake up. I normally have quite puffy eyes in the morning, but for some reason my forehead felt like it was stretching. Mind you, it's 7:30 a.m. My god, the trenches. Already. Great. I sit up in bed and for some reason I was like, wait, I need to do some yoga stretches. Like something in my brain, I get hives, apparently, I sit on the edge of my bed and I start the edge of my bed, and I start breathing really intently. You know, I was giving very like hold for 4, out for 4, in for 4, etc. And then I was also doing some stretches, and for some reason, like, I was like, why does my forehead feel weird? Anyway, I go and make my pot of coffee, classic KC vibes, Kit Costello that is. I have my little cafetiere, very French, major. Also, fun fact, I put salt in my coffee press, with sugar in the coffee press. Sexy, delectable, everyone screams. And there are parades down the street when I make a coffee. There are. No, seriously. This podcast is so stupid. I love it. Anyway, so I go into my office, which famously is at the end of my garden. And as I walk in, I notice someone in the mirror. I'm like, who the hell is that? It's me, bitch. I have the puffiest eyes I've ever seen in my existence. And my eye shape had completely changed. My eyelids were now overlapping my actual eyesight. And I said, oh, what's going on? There was redness around my eyes. I started screaming. And I hadn't noticed the hives on my legs just yet. So I'm sitting down, kind of ignore the fact that my eyes are completely swollen. And as I put my legs on my coffee table, don't judge, because I'm getting comfortable. It's the morning. Hello. I'm watching normal people. Again, don't judge. I look at my legs and, hives all over them. So I start screaming a little bit. By the way, you haven't skipped ahead in the podcast. This is the beginning. Yes, welcome to Self-Interrupted with Kit Costello. My name is Kit Costello. I'm your host. And yes, I'm going to be talking about my, for some reason, allergic reaction to the morning. I don't know. And that's just how this podcast goes. Anyway, sorry, why would you interrupt me? This is my podcast. Hello. So I go inside, I take an antihistamine, and I'm looking in the mirror. I say, if this doesn't go down, I'm going to have to go to A&E. A&E! I don't want to go to A&E. On what, a Tuesday morning? Not on my watch. So I just was like, this isn't happening. I just told myself, no, it's not. It's not. And then I started like, classic taking the piss a little bit, making a couple videos for my friends. Like, oh my God, like my face is swollen. There was like an undercurrent of like, am I about to die? It's a few hours later and my face is no longer swollen. I do have redness around my eyes and they're a little bit itchy. I don't know what's going on, guys. I will say there is currently wisteria growing into my bedroom. And I know what you're thinking, Kit, well, maybe that's the culprit. Maybe the culprit is having a outdoor plant starting to grow inside your house. And listen, baby, it's all for the give. No, it is, because baby, I am the giver, like Chapel once said. And wisteria growing, no, I know you're laughing. You're having a little giggle. And this is funny to you, isn't it? My eyes being puffy is funny to you. Me having hives all over my body. My buddy. Wow, when I sit on the edge of my bed and I breathe and I have hives on my body. When I have hives on my body, is that what makes you laugh? Anyway, welcome back to Self-Interrupted, guys. My hives have gone down and so has my swollen eyes. And let's celebrate that. Let's also celebrate that we have a new topic to talk about today. Yes. The topic being the social media language and really just talking about the boundaries that we can set on social media and also the nuance of maturity and immaturity when it comes to unfollowing. Why is it deemed immature to unfollow someone that maybe you had a situationship with or a relationship with? Why isn't it considered mature to put your feelings first? We're going to be talking about that and my reasoning behind unfollowing people, specifically people that I maybe have been in relationships with. But first, we need to get into the catch for the week. So let's get into the catch for the week. Okay, I will be honest with you guys, not much has been going on this week due to me feeling a little bit #down in the dumps, a little bit #in bed every day because I've been feeling a little bit, disgusting. I had a little bit of a fear that my viral fatigue era was coming back. If you don't know, in around 2022, 2023, I had viral fatigue, which is basically like chronic fatigueness. where in my experience, I had migraines every day. And I will say, migraines means migraines, not a headache. And I'm not trying to shade anyone, okay? But when a migraine is a migraine, it's different to a bad headache. A migraine is severe for me. I get something called a migraine aura, not trying to flex. And this isn't the Oppression Olympics, but yeah. So that's what migraines were for me. And during my viral fatigue era in 2022/2023, why is it giving fall winter 2022? The spring summer collection. But I was getting those migraine auras every single day to the point where I couldn't even really like sit up without feeling like I needed to like go back to bed. It was actually insane. And this week I've been feeling as though that was coming back and it was actually quite terrifying. It was very scary vibes. So I had to take a second for myself this week. So I apologize if the catch for the week this week isn't as interesting, let's say. First of all, I will say please rate the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, etc. So many new listeners, it's really appreciated, but I'd love to see those ratings go up. So please go ahead and rate the podcast on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, etc. It means a lot to me. It really, really does, and it doesn't take a lot of time, guys. It really doesn't. Also, Substack. Guys, the Substack is kind of going off. By going off, we're getting more than 2 likes on a post, and that's special, and that's something to be celebrated. My last Substack essay is actually about this topic, entitled I Unfollowed Him Finally. So if you want to learn even more about the details of what I'm going to be talking about in this episode that maybe I don't want to talk about on the podcast, go and read the Substack. But with the self-promo out of the way, let's get into the catch-up of the week. Okay, first up, what do you guys know about cheesy beans and mash? I'm serious. Question for culture. I want comments down below. What do you know about cheesy beans and mash? And before any of you from different territories start coming toward me, Kit, what do you mean cheesy beans and mash? What do you mean mash? What do you mean cheese? What do you mean beans? All in one meal. What do you mean? Well, sweetheart, that's what I mean. I love beans. 1. I love cheese. 2. I love mash. 3. Put them all together, baby. It's a party. It's a carnival. It's a parade down the streets of the KCCU. Yeah, no, the other day after I had a photo shoot, I came back home and I literally engulfed myself into cheesy beans and mash. There is something sacred about that. If you grew up as a young child, that made no sense. Hey guys, if you grew up as a young child, no, because some people grow up as young adults, right? Right. When growing up, if you had this meal, it's so nostalgic for you. There are certain meals that are just like, they hold so much nostalgia, which I really love. One for me was spaghetti bolognese. My mum used to make that all the time. But since going hashtag gluten-free and hashtag vegan/vegetarian, I haven't had my mum's bolognese in like years. And that's so sad, you know? But also, what was another special meal? I used to love, this is so rogue. I used to love like tuna pasta, just like tuna pasta. I'm talking like, tuna out of the can with a tomato sauce. So simple, so easy. I also used to love like pasta salad when I was younger. That was my favorite actually. Like cut up small vegetables with cold pasta and mayonnaise. Sex. Love it. Also, when I was younger, I convinced myself that I made up the recipe of pasta, mayonnaise, and sweet corn. Like I was like, oh no, this is my thing. Like, wait. Not me being Leonardo da Vinci right now. Like, yeah, I did just invent this. And honestly, maybe I did because I haven't really heard that many people screaming about that. I used to eat just like as a snack, a can of sweet corn, just out of the can, just sit there and eat it. Then I found out that that was weird. Also, recently, I love talking about like weird food combinations. It's like my favorite thing. I realized that when I was younger, my mom used to give us like super bizarre snacks. She used to just give us like a pot of sunflower seeds to eat after school. Isn't that kind of crazy? But now I look back, I love sunflower seeds. I can eat them like just out of the pack. Anyway, right? This is what you come to Self-Interrupted for. This like bizarre thing. Oh, speaking about somewhat bizarre things, Lionsgate portal opened. Hashtag high frequency only, please. Lionsgate portal. Now, what is this? I hear you cry. So I'm not 100% sure, I will be honest, but Lionsgate portal peaked on the 8th of the 8th. So that's the 8th of August. Lionsgate portal is an influx of energy that comes when certain stars and planets align. I'm getting really good at explaining things that I don't know. Maybe that's because I'm a bit of a pathological liar and some of those things aren't even true. I kind of love that. I don't love a pathological liar. Sorry to like subject shift again. I actually did get a comment the other day that said, I love your voice, but honestly, the amount of times you switch subjects is kind of crazy. And I was like, oh, it's almost like the podcast is called Self Interrupted for a reason. Anyway, so there was a pathological liar that was at my sixth form, and she lied about being related to royalty, even though, you know, she didn't have any of the means to back that up. Like, she, you know, would say that she was going to Blenheim Palace over the weekend to stay there, which just wasn't the truth. And she would Photoshop. It got really bad, guys. Like, if you've watched Pretty Little Liars, she was the Allison to the Pretty Little Liars gang. Like, in our group of friends, she used to literally try and convince us that she was related to royalty, and she would Photoshop herself next to royalty and post fake photos of like her fake boyfriend. And we were like 16, 17, 18 at this time. Like, she was old enough to know better. It was kind of crazy. Looking back, it was fierce. Like, I absolutely loved that for her. And honestly, she made our sixth form experience so much fun because it did feel like Pretty Little Liars. Like, there were little parts that we would find out were lies, but we wouldn't tell her that we knew because she had stuff on us. Like, it was a little bit crazy. She was very good at like getting the truth out of people. So I would tell her things, and then she'd always kind of act as if she was gonna say something about the secrets that I told her if I brought up that she was lying. And she did that with everyone. And I love it. I'm sorry, that's really toxic, but like, looking back, it's so Pretty Little Liars because all of us knew that she was lying, but no one said. Like, that's power. I'm gonna be honest. But anyway, that will stem from me saying that I am lying about Lionsgate Portal, which I don't think I am because I'm pretty sure that is the truth. It's just an influx of energy that is used to manifest, really. So on that day, it was high frequency only. And to me, that means just listening to good pop songs rather than listening to like sad music, which ironically, Ethel Cain's new album came out on that day. And I had to push it to the side and wait until the next day to listen to it, which a quick little review. Loved that album. It was amazing, very heartfelt and beautiful. Back to Lionsgate Portal. Loved it. I was listening to frequencies all day. I will play some for you right now. Yeah. And honestly, guys, I still listen to it. Sometimes I'll be watching a YouTube video and I'll just have it playing in the background because there is something very calming about having frequencies play. It's actually really beautiful. So I'd really recommend it. If you're feeling like you're in a bit of a slump, just putting that on. I don't know if it necessarily does anything. I think it more so subconsciously makes me think I'm in a spa, which relaxes me because it's giving very spa music. Anyway, it was Lionsgate Portal. And something that I started doing on Lionsgate Portal is I started telling myself that I want to act like the version of me in the future that I want to become. And I don't want to become her. I am her. So I'm not telling myself that, oh, I'm not almost like preparing to be that person. I'm allowing myself to believe that I am that person. And it can be really small things, like really frivolous things, like instead of just leaving my laundry on the side and not putting it away in my wardrobe, the future version of me that I want to become would be that organized queen. She would put that away in the wardrobe. So when I doubt myself and I'm like, oh, I don't really want to do that right now, I'll be like, the future version of me would just do it. And there is something beautiful in just like doing it because the amount of time that I spend on my phone is actually embarrassing. And the amount of time that I will allow myself to watch the same podcast episodes that I've seen of other people's podcasts, watch the same vlogs that I've already seen. I comfort watch all of this stuff and I don't allow myself to experience new things. And I know that sounds really deep, but it's true. I want to experience new things and I want to experience the version of myself that I really want to become. And I'm giving myself the grace to become that. I just want to become the version of myself that I'm proud of and that I know that I want to become. So I hope that gives you some inspiration because I think what I love about something like Lionsgate Portal is that at the end of the day, it's not that serious, but it kind of just gives you a little reminder, maybe like midway through the year, that like you can start again. You can have new goals because I think New Year's Day is obviously idolized to be that moment in your year. But that's the beginning of the year, bitch. I don't even know what I set as my goals this year. I don't even know if I set goals. I think I just did like a massive decluttering of my brain New Year's Eve. And then New Year's Day, I was just like, I'm just going to do what I want this year. And I guess I've kind of done that, but I think sometimes a little bit of direction is nice. So this is your reminder that any day throughout the year, you can change the direction of your life. Like you can give yourself new goals. You can start to kind of skim through the people that maybe aren't serving you in your life. You always have time to reinvent, and you don't just have to wait for a certain day of the year to do that. Okay. Right. Oh my gosh, guys, I finished Sex in the City. No, I don't want to talk about it. Or can we not talk about that? I loved Sex in the City dearly. Like, that show, I think I've been watching it maybe for the past, I want to say 4 months. I think there are definitely parts that have aged pretty badly. Some jokes, specifically to do with the transgender community, have aged very badly. There's like a whole episode about transgender people, and there are slurs thrown around. There are all different types of things. But the heart of the show, I think, is really quite beautiful. And the heart just being that women's stories matter. Women's stories matter. Reese Witherspoon on that panelist talk show. Women's stories matter. And they do. They do. Women's stories do matter. And I just think it's really important to those friends in your life, those female friends. If you're a girl, like having those female friendships mean more than any relationship with a man. And that's serious. Like I'm being dead serious right now. Also, what I loved about Sex and the City is that they were kind of somewhat decentering men in a way. Obviously, like the underlying theme of the show is men and male validation in a sense, but there was something very sexy about almost every other episode. There was a new person that one of the main characters was dating. And as someone that's a bit of a hopeless romantic and tries to attach to a singular person and make it work with someone, sometimes it just doesn't work with someone. And you've got to allow yourself to move on from that. And again, I go back to the version of myself that I want to become, and she would understand that some people just aren't made for you, and maybe it's not your time with that person, and that's okay. And there's beauty in that. There's beauty in learning from relationships of the past, and that's what I think Sex and the City does really well, is like displaying that women can date men and date multiple men. And you don't have to romanticize every single relationship, because not every single relationship deserves that. Anyway, finished Sex in the City. Of course, I watched Sex in the City on DVD because hashtag bring back physical media. Not that it's going anywhere, but I just want to bring it back into the KCCU. Speaking of physical media, I did buy a new box set. New box set alert, guys. New box set alert, Dawson's Creek. So I will be watching Dawson's Creek for the first time. If any of you have any past experience with Dawson's Creek, please tap in. Please give me a little DM. Give me a little rundown on what I can expect, if it's worth it. I'm excited to watch Dawson's Creek. I do have a problem at the moment with committing to watching something, and it is annoying me. Like, I'll go to watch a film, and then I'll distract myself, or I'll just procrastinate watching a film, which seems absolutely insane to me, but I do it, and I know that a lot of people do it. So I'm trying my best to like just enjoy. Like, let's just enjoy the media that we have to consume. There's so much to consume. Like, it's so funny. My brother and his girlfriend the other day were asking me for recommendations of a show to watch, because they were like, oh, there's nothing to watch. And I was like, oh, that's so true. Wait, yes, there is. There's an abundance of things to watch. But I'm just like them, in that sometimes I'll like look around on Netflix, on Amazon Prime, on any of those kind of streaming services, and I'll be like, ugh, there's nothing here. Yes, there is. There's actually too much here that it's almost overcompensating. But yes, so I will be watching Dawson's Creek, long story short. And finally, Mini Interruption is back. Guys, everyone, let's celebrate. I heard your praise. Nope, I heard your prayers. I heard your cries. Kit, where's Mini Interruption? We need Mini Interruption. Oh, okay. I am stumbling on my words, but I do want to remind you this morning I woke up with hives. So no, I don't want to hear it. You're screaming at me, Kit. Why are you stumbling on your words? Maybe because this morning I thought I was going to have to go to A&E and get that checked out. But now we're fine, so let's celebrate. But yeah, Mini Interruption's back. I heard your prayers. Mini Interruption's going to be every single week. Yes, I'm working myself because I need to. I love this. Guys, I love this podcast so much, and I really want this podcast to work out. And it is, and I'm really proud of this season. I think this season is the most successful season ever of Self Interrupted, and I'm so proud of that. But I'm very aware that there's been a couple of weeks that I've missed. Really, they're out of my control because I was ill and whatever, but like, I'm just really hard on myself, and I want to put out the best things that I can put out. And I hope that, with this podcast, every episode means so much to me. So something like Mini Interruption, I kind of love doing it because it's a bit of a mess. Like, it's me just having fun. I'm allowed to have a lot of fun on that. Not that I can't have fun on here, because of course I can. I'm silly on here. But Mini Interruption, it's like my victory lap. Like, I've done the episode of the week. I can kind of just have a little bit of a joke with the Kissnators. But yeah, what do you want to see this season for Mini Interruption and for Self Interrupted? We're over halfway through this season, and I would love to hear some of your feedback. Like, have you been enjoying the season? What episodes have you liked? What haven't you liked? Maybe I'll do a little survey. But yeah, that's the catch up of the week. Now let's get into the topic of the week, which is currently titled I Unfollowed Him, semicolon, let me just double check, the unspoken social media language. Let's get into it. Maybe I can call it the unspoken social media love language. That could be fun. Okay, anyway, let's get into the topic of the week. I just did that thing where I looked at my phone and I was like, thank goodness my phone's on Do Not Disturb. I would have been getting so many texts and calls and emails. My phone wasn't on Do Not Disturb. No one's contacted me. That's great. No, I love it. It's actually really nice. It's really nice to be reminded that maybe no one actually really loves me. That's really special. But let's get into this topic. I want to start off by reading an excerpt of my Substack, which is based on this topic, just so that we can understand where I'm coming from. And also a little tease into my Substack, okay? Oh my God, wait, story time with Kit. Guys, story time. Like I said, I've been scorned by this behavior recently, by the guy I was dating. When you rely on minimal affection, you find affection in everything and anything possible. Something as simple as a story like can feel like a homecoming to a relationship that you thought was lost, which now looking back is utterly sad and empty. I find that when I write these essays, I'm taken back by the little respect that I had for myself and the love that I thought I deserved. We deserve more than a story like to provide affection, to provide understanding of a relationship. I hope to anyone reading this, you think I sound utterly embarrassing and shameful, because that would mean that you can't relate to my desperate tendencies. But unfortunately, I can almost guarantee that a lot of people, especially women around my age, have been programmed to hold similar beliefs. But on the flip side of finding affection in everything, you soon start to find animosity in everything, especially the ways you are interacted with on social media. What happens when the guy you are dating stops liking your stories, stops replying to them to say that you look beautiful? What happens when his texts don't end with an X like they always have? Do you convince yourself that this is all part of the process, the dating process that is? Do you tell yourself and your friends that this is actually a really good sign because we don't have to send each other kisses to let each other know how we feel? Do you continue to tell your friends about his lack of action in hopes that maybe one day you will start to believe that a relationship that you pictured isn't actually crumbling? I'm sorry, Jane Austen. I didn't mean to come for your give. What I love about Substack is that I really have time to process my words and display them in a way that I think is digestible in a sense, Also, I love that Substack because, I know that most guys aren't going over there to read my Substack, so I can be a bit more blunt about the way I speak about them. I've had one too many guys that I've been dating or talking to with literally no context DM me or text me and say, I'm becoming a kittenator. How disgusting that is? I absolutely hate it. It literally makes my skin crawl because it means that they've listened to the podcast. When you go on a date and you say you have a podcast, the first thing that person's going to do is say, can I listen to your podcast? Oh, no, maybe let's not do that, because I just think it's a bit unfair, frankly. It's you don't need to know. There are 80 hours worth of audio that you can hear me talking about me and my life. And I just don't have that for you. So I think that's unfair. Also, I remember when I was dating this guy that I was talking about in that Substack article, and that inspired this episode as well. I remember I told him about my podcast and I was like, yeah, I have a podcast. I remember he rolled his eyes on our first date and was like, oh, okay. And then on our second date, he was like, I listened to your podcast. It's actually quite good. The audio is quite good. I was expecting it to be quite bad. I think that's just so disgusting. Thinking the worst of someone's passion Oh, it's gonna be bad. I just had a feeling it was gonna be bad. I understand where he was coming from, but it was just like so uncalled for. Anyway, proved him wrong because the podcast is great, and now he's inspiring me to do episodes because of how bad he treated me. Right, right. In the Substack, I talk about the story liking. I talk about just the language that we use on social media to kind of convey how we feel without actually telling someone how we feel. So, for example, liking your crush's story means that maybe you have a bit of a crush on them. But then if you're dating someone and it's not going well and you don't want to explicitly say, hey, this isn't going well, you stop interacting with their stories. You stop popping up to them saying that they look beautiful. And I'm so utterly aware of how frivolous this all sounds and immature this sounds. We'll get onto that in a second. But this is the reality of dating in your 20s and being on social media in your 20s. It just is what it is. And I'm kind of sick of acting as if I'm immature for thinking that, or I lack emotional depth because this is how I see emotion being perceived. Like, I think the reason as to why a lot of us find value in a story like, or in a story reply, or in a follow is because the people that are doing that find value in it. Like, they are the ones that are holding that value, and they're the ones that are giving it to you, and they're the ones that are taking it away when they're not giving it to you. That's what I mean when I say there's affection in everything and there's also animosity in everything. I think a lot of the things that specifically men do on social media, it is planned and it is strategic. There's always something else to it. Specifically, I'm talking about crushes, really. There's always something else in it. Like, I remember recently, social media is so stupid. Like, I remember there was this guy recently that followed me on social media and liked most of my photos, followed me. I followed him back because I thought he was cute. Then I messaged him and I was like, hey. He was like, hey. And I was like, where have you come from then? Because he just like followed me out of nowhere. We had no mutuals. And he just stopped messaging me. And I was like, what are we doing? Like, what's the point? Then to find out that he's like some kind of like music artist. I think he just wanted me to follow him back so that he could gain his following. Go. Anyway, first up, I want to talk about my recent unfollowing of the guy I was dating. And I want to get more into that and my law around unfollowing people and how I perceive that and my relationship with unfollowing. As you guys know, I'm currently in my decentering men era, and some of you may be reading this episode as though I'm centering men again, but I'm really not. This is me processing decentering men, and this is one of the stages, is cleansing you and your social media of the people that have treated you wrong, whether that's men, whether that's women. Whoever has treated you wrong don't deserve to be in your space. And with this guy I was dating, you guys know by now, like, we were dating for a few months. It wasn't necessarily serious, but it was like one of the first times I'd like properly dated someone, and it ended incredibly, I wouldn't say incredibly bad, it just ended worse than I would have imagined. Our relationship was sweet. It was nice. I think at the end we kind of realized that we didn't really get on as well as we thought we would or could. And it basically ended over text. In previous kind of relationships and talking stages, I have always been the first to unfollow, block, and move on. But the reason I didn't do that this time is because I kind of held this false sense of hope that he'd come back around, which I really hate to admit because of the way that he treated me. He didn't treat me well. But I think in some way, I kind of just wanted to continue following him for that sake. I didn't want to unfollow him, and then in like a couple months' time, I find myself on a Sunday night feeling a bit desperate, and then I refollow him, and then I kind of like back down, lowering myself to that kind of worth. So just in case that happened, I wanted to continue following him. Also, in my mind, it felt like the mature thing to do. I think there's so much to be said about the idea of maturity and immaturity, especially post like a breakup. Do you unfollow the person that you've been dating just because you broke up? Or do you continue following them to save face and to act like you're this really cool girl who doesn't care and is very nonchalant and can live with the fact that this person's seeing every move in your social media life and you're seeing theirs? It was like a week post breakup, and I was looking at his stories. I was watching him doing all of these plans that he had told me on our last date, these concerts that he was going to go to, the people that he was going to see, the places that he was going to go. And it felt so bizarre to be looking through that window of his life from the outside and not being able to interact with him because it wasn't appropriate. But for some reason, once again, I felt the need to continue following him just to save face and act like I'm really cool. And he continued following me. And it felt like this mutual agreement where we were like, okay, well, we're just going to keep following each other and this is normal and this is what we should be doing. Over time, I just felt as though it felt like we were kind of holding out for each other, like just in case. What if one of us gets drunk and, it's an option for us? Like we can text each other, we can talk to each other. I didn't want to be that option for him. And it took me around a week to kind of come to that consensus, because it does. It takes you a while to get over that kind of breakup because it's not substantial enough for you to really mourn the loss of the person, but it also wasn't nothing. So it took me a second to kind of understand what it was and understand that, yeah, he did treat me wrong. And I don't want to be in the firing line when he gets drunk so that he can message me. I want him to think that he can't and that that's off bounds. After about a month of continually following this guy after breaking up with him and him following me, I kind of came to the decision that I was going to unfollow him and I was going to make him unfollow me, which I love that feature on Instagram, by the way. If you don't know, you can make someone unfollow you. Gorgeous. Because I don't want to see that you've seen my story. Because the thing is, you fall into this pattern of trying to impress the person that is following you, that is from your past life. Whether that's a friendship breakup, whether that's a breakup romantically. If you're following each other subconsciously, in my case anyway, I was feeling the need to impress him, post kind of sexy revealing photos on my Instagram story, or post photos with my friends when I'm out at dinner, or posting photos of me outside so it looks like I'm not inside mourning the loss of this guy that I was dating for a few months. There is so much to be said about the characters that we put online, specifically the characters and the versions of ourselves that we put up online to save face of the version of ourselves who we actually are. During that period, that breakup period, I was feeling crap. I was feeling really bad. And I was trying my best to express it on the podcast, but it even got to a point in the podcast where I was like, I feel like everyone's getting sick and tired of me talking about this now, and I feel a bit embarrassed. And that's why for the past few episodes, I've been really deliberate in letting you guys know that I don't want to talk about this all the time, but it's what's happening in my life, and I don't know how to get around the subject matter. And I think what I've always done on this podcast is just talk about how I'm feeling. And I like to sink my teeth into my emotion and to let you guys really know, because otherwise I find myself just playing up for camera. And I think that's just as bad as me trying to post a hot, sexy selfie on Instagram stories for him to reply to it. I think it's just as worse, because who am I really trying to save face for? My audience, so that they don't think that I'm having a bad time going through this breakup? Or am I trying to do it for him so that when maybe he comes across my podcast, he doesn't see episodes and episodes about him? I'm at a position now where I'm like, I don't care, bitch. I have emotion. That's what this podcast is all about. This podcast is about me going through my 20s, holding emotion to a high value. And if my emotion is wavered in any way, I talk about it on here. And maybe there will be multiple episodes in the future where I talk about this. But I think that's actually really beautiful, because this is the season of my life. I call it, season 5 and season 4 and season 3, season 2, season 1. But in reality, these are literally seasons of my life, because I do not save face on this podcast. This podcast, for better or for worse, is me, bitch. Like, I think a lot of people ask, like, Kit, why don't you have guests on Self-Interrupted? I don't want to have guests on my podcast. I don't think I ever will, to be honest, unless we start a spin-off season, like a mini interruption, but for guests, because this podcast is so inherently me that I couldn't have someone sitting across from me and acting as if I've cared to put together a bunch of questions, because that's not what this podcast is. This podcast is a relationship between me and the listener, and it's me being brutally honest about my life in hopes that someone out there can relate to it, And even if you can't relate to it in this current moment of your life, I want you to know that this is always here for you to come back to. Like, if you're listening to this and you're like, this isn't my give right now, you don't have to listen to this episode, because I know that with something like Sex and the City, for example, if I'd watched that when people were telling me to watch it, when I was like 16, I wouldn't have understood it. Now that I'm 23, I've watched Sex and the City and I've been able to understand it from a different point of view than I think I would have at the age of 16. And I think that's what I really love about this podcast is my brutal honesty. I want you to know that it's really just, more than anything, it's such a great sign that I trust you guys and I love this community that we've built. Going back to the point at hand about unfollowing, like I said, there's this kind of maturity where some people, specifically, on TikTok or friends of friends, will tell you that it's the mature thing to do. And there will be people in your life that maybe you don't get on with that you've got to. And I really disagree. I just don't think that you've got to save face. For who? Who are you saving face for? You're putting up all of these borders and you're putting all these masks. And who are you trying to impress? These people that don't even care about this impression of you. They don't care. They've never have really cared. Specifically, this guy I was dating, it's like, oh, for the split second, he might go onto my Instagram or he might listen to my podcast. He's going to think, oh, Kit's a chill girl. I don't care. I don't care if he comes onto my podcast and thinks I'm a crazy psycho for talking about him, because that's what it made me. That's what that relationship made me. And maybe that reflects more of him than it does of me. And that's what I want you to take away from this episode. I want you to take away that sometimes the mature thing is to step away. Sometimes the mature thing is to understand the boundary of unfollowing someone. There is boundaries in that. And there's also beauty in that, because as soon as I unfollowed him, I'll be honest, his account's on private. So I knew that unfollowing him, he's a private person and he's actually private on social media. I knew that it would probably be the last time I saw his face, unless I really did some digging on the internet. And there was like this wave of closure, but it was laced with sadness, because I was like, oh my goodness, I'm not going to be able to stalk his Instagram again. And then I caught myself and I said, for the past month, almost every day, multiple times a day, you've been going onto this man's Instagram account, checking his following list to see if he's still following you. You've been going onto his pictures just to remind yourself of his face. And all for what? What is that actually doing? What are you gaining from that? And I said at the beginning of this episode in the Catch Up of the Week that I'm trying to become the woman that I want to become. I don't want to be the woman that looks at her ex's Instagram every single day, multiple times a day, just to remind herself of the silhouette of him. I don't want to be the woman that lowers my standards for someone just for the sake of having connection, because there's not connection in someone that's lowered your standards. That's not connection. Connection is someone that meets you at your standards and that respects you. And I challenged myself that day to unfollow him. And I know it sounds so silly, and to some people listening, it might sound immature, but that's where I am in my life. And if you think that's immature, that's immature. But frankly, I'm just so happy that I did, because after that sadness of the understanding that I probably wouldn't see his face again, I remember I was writing in my journal and I was like, oh, like it's sad, like he won't be able to contact me. And then in all caps under it, I wrote, good, bitch. That's the whole point. That is moving on. I think with moving on from any kind of relationship that's toxic for you, with social media, there's this idea that someone always has to be ingrained into your life. Like it's set in stone. Like these people that you meet are always going to be in your life just for the sake of following them. And it's not true. If you want to move on from someone, I think in a lot of ways you do have to unfollow them. You do have to set that boundary so that you allow yourself the grace of just moving on, of not thinking about them when you're posting a picture on Instagram. You're not thinking their thought process. You're not thinking, are they thinking, oh, I missed out? Because no, they didn't miss out. If they missed out, they would have reached out. There is just so much beauty in hitting that unfollow button and that boundary. And I think sometimes we've got to remind ourselves of that, because there's so much toxicity in a lot of these self-help people and therapized people on TikTok, and even your friends that will consume that media, and they'll tell you like, to become a mature person, you shouldn't be unfollowing these people because it's not the mature thing to do. You should be able to move on in your life without Bitch, be quiet. Sometimes the way to go is the way that your mind is wanting to. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but I found that as I've grown older, it's really important to trust your gut and to trust your opinion. The amount of times that I will ask my friends for a second opinion is actually a little bit embarrassing. Like, I'm someone that knows what I want. Deep down, I always know what I want, but I'm always asking other people for a second opinion just because I don't have this trust. I don't have this understanding of self enough to make that decision for myself. I'm starting to come to the consensus that there's always this voice inside my head at the top of my brain telling me that you know what to do, and it might be hard for you to do it, but there's reason in that uncomfortability. There's a reason why it feels a little bit uncomfortable, because maybe it's not the step that you thought this relationship was going to take, but it's a step that you're taking to move on, to become that woman that you want to become. I want to quickly touch on the language of social media, specifically the love language of social media that I briefly talked about in regards to the liking of stories, the liking of posts. A lot of this type of interaction is very low effort, but for a lot of people, it's high rewards. And the reason for that is because it's so non-committal. I've been someone that's liked a story or been really happy when someone's liked my story, because you do get a little, you do get a little rush of serotonin. There's something sassy. There's something a little bit sassy, guys. There is something a little bit sexy, but there is time and place, guys. There's time and place. I love that I come on these episodes where I'm trying to give like a little bit of self-help, a little bit of advice, and I do kind of back down on it. I'm like, wait, guys, don't hold a story like to a high regard. And then here I am being like, wait, it's a little bit sassy though. Like, okay, wait, let me just be real. There is something about, having a crush, specifically when it's someone on Instagram that maybe you don't actually know in real life, and maybe you've been going back and forth a little bit, liking each other's photos, viewing each other's stories, maybe a couple of times. And then all of a sudden, for the first time, you get a little story like. And there's something a little bit sexy about that. However, much like the sexiness, there can also be a world where you understand the low effort that comes with that. Yes, you can enjoy it. I don't want to come on here and ruin anyone's fun. Baby, I'm not going to rain on your parade, okay? Never that. But I also do want to remind you and myself that these actions are so low effort. Like, someone liking your story does not mean that much. To you, it means a lot. To them, of course, it was intentional. But it's so low risk, high reward, because them tapping a button doesn't really mean that much, but that can initiate conversation. But if it doesn't initiate conversation, it really isn't that deep. However, if someone was to then actually message you instead of just liking your story, that's slightly more of a commitment. There's more to lose there, because then you're looking a little bit, ooh, like she slid into the DMs, like, ooh, she's doing something there, rather than just liking someone's story. The amount of stories that I've liked and got no response from it. But then again, like, what are you meant to say? Like, sometimes a man will like my story and I'm like, well, what do you want me to do with this information? DM you? And I have previously, and I think that's sexy as hell. There was a guy that like used to like all of my stories, like every single one. And I was like, you're going to keep liking my stories? Or you're going to message me? And I DM'd him that. And I think that was so hot, because there was something like, ooh, yeah, I have the power. A little mix. What, 2018 release? Like, I do have the power, featuring Stormzy. Are you going to keep liking my stories, or are you going to message me? Because it does get a bit silly after a while. There's the low risk, there's the high reward. And I think a lot of the things with social media, it is that kind of thing. There's not a lot of commitment, and there's a lot of disposability of people. Like, you can easily dispose of people, and that's something that I was really aware of doing when I was unfollowing, because I didn't want this person, even though he treated me badly, to think that I was just like disposing of him, because I've been in that position before. I've been in the position where I'll be talking to a guy and it will kind of like maybe fade out, like the connection's kind of lost a bit, and then all of a sudden I'm blocked and everything, and it just feels a bit abrasive. It feels a bit intense and harsh, but maybe for them, it felt like the right thing to do. And it does kind of take a second to understand that, because I think sometimes there's a lot of disposability. When we talk about dating apps as well, dating apps, it literally is just like this objectifying of someone, because you're not really understanding the nuance of these people. And half the people that I swipe what's right. So no, left. I say no to them on dating apps. Half of those people, I'm sure if I met them in a pub, I would fall head over heels for them. But because maybe they don't fit my attraction requirements, I'm like, no. Like, that's just another version of this disposability that we've kind of been brought up with in this dating scene and even the friendship scene. Like, if something doesn't work out for you, straight away, if you go on like a friend date or something and it doesn't work out, that one friend date doesn't work out, sometimes I'll just be like, oh, well, it didn't work. Like, I probably won't see them again. But there were friends that I was trying to make at school for like 7 years. We didn't get on at school. But then after we left school, we had a blooming friendship. So I think there's kind of like this death of a slow burn in relationships when it comes to dating or friendship. We kind of want this instant gratification, and that can come in so many different ways and so many different forms. And I think that we've been programmed that since such a young age, whether it is to do with the way that we view people because of dating apps or the way that we interact with people due to social media and a story like or a story reply. We view people as something to kind of get something out of. You have to get something out of them, get an emotion out of them, whether that's liking their story, replying to them, and hoping for them to see you in a certain way. I just think it's kind of interesting, and I'm a victim to it, and I'm a perpetrator as well. I think that's the right word. I do it, sometimes. Like, I involve myself in liking a little story or two. Like, I do. Of course I do. I do a little story reply sometimes. Of course I do. It's like, I don't know. It's kind of, there's also the other side of the conversation where it's like, okay, well, what else do you do, girl? Like, you're saying it's maybe a little bit bad to like a story. Not bad, but like, there's good and bad in it, but it's like, well, how do you like get to know these people then, like, that maybe you have a crush on? I think in the future I kind of do want to just like reply to someone's story. I want to initiate a conversation. I don't want to play this like hard to get give. Like, that's not my vibe. I'm so blunt, I'm so matter of fact, as you can tell with this podcast. Like, I'd rather just do it and like get it over and done with. And that's kind of what I did with this unfollowing. Like, I just wanted to get it over and done with and move on. And I think if that came off a bit harsh and matter of fact to that person that I was dating, then it did. I don't really want to put up this front and this facade because I was hurt in that relationship. And I think I was only hurting myself by allowing them to follow me and allowing myself to follow them. So I think sometimes you do have to be a little bit disposable of people in your life that don't deserve your time or your space. But I think that there's a conversation to be had around knowing when that disposal takes place, because I think it's very easy to quickly dispose of someone when maybe there's chances to give or there's relationships to evolve. And I know that sounds a little bit, it can sound, I don't know. I think when I do these topics, there's like an argument that is in my head. I almost have like a debate in my head because there's part of me that's saying to myself, like, well, you just said that everyone's disposable, and now you're saying that you should dispose of people that aren't good in your life. But in my Substack, I started it off by saying, I find that in this new age of social media, people are very quick to dispose of people, but some people are meant to be disposed of in your life, like, I think we give grace to people that maybe just don't deserve it. And as much as there's an over disposal of people, I think there's also an over acceptance of bad behavior and this language that, like, oh, they have to continue following you because it's the mature thing to do and you need to save face and you need to be the cool girl. And it's like, well, I don't really want to be that, So I think there's nuance to all the conversations around disposal of people. And I don't just want to sit here and be like, you shouldn't do it, and then literally the next sentence say, well, I did it. Because of course there's nuance to that. But in this situation, I didn't want to continue following him. And I ended that relationship in a way that I thought was the most mature way to do it. And this is like me sealing that envelope on my maturity and saying that I really want to end this. And I've unfollowed you and you've unfollowed me. Let's just end that there. Because to talk about maturity for a second, I've really, my whole life, always struggled with the concept of maturity and being immature. I think being the youngest sibling, I've always been told like my whole life that like I'm acting like a child or that I am immature. And I've always really struggled with that word. So when I've like dated people in the past, or I've had friendships in the past where maybe we've had like an argument and people have said like, you're acting really immature, it's always really struck me. And I think it's really bled into my adult life. And I'm aware when I'm being immature, and I don't want to be immature, and I'm trying my best to grow. And I think this relationship with this person has really allowed me to understand my maturity and places in that maturity where I can evolve. In a way, me unfollowing is me evolving in my maturity, because I think the immature thing would be to try and save face and would be to try and impress this person who has disrespected me. So that's the topic. I hope that from this episode you've gained an understanding of self-worth and self-respect, and understanding that like it's actually okay to set a boundary. You're allowed to set a boundary and you deserve that. And people don't deserve to have this window into your life. If that's on your social media, they don't deserve that if they haven't earned it. And if, that gets taken away from them, if they disrespect you in a way. But let's get into the vinyl of the week and the recommendation of the week. The vinyl of the week this week, of course, is Willoughby Tucker, I Will Always Love You by Ethel Cain. Ethel Cain is, like, she's an artist's artist for sure. I think her songwriting is so beautiful. My favorite off of this album is Nettles, I think. I actually have my favorites here. Let me read them out to you. My favorites are Waco, Texas, A Knock at the Door, Dust Ball, and Nettles. I think that those songs are gorgeous. I also really love Willoughby's Interlude, I believe it is, the one after Nettles. I just love listening to this. And I also, something I really like about Ethel is that her pacing of songs is really well done, because they never feel incredibly long or hard to get through. But yeah, I'm actually going to see Ethel in London and I'm really excited about it. My recommendation of the week this week, what's my recommendation of the week? My recommendation of the week this week is unfollowing people. Yeah. And I don't think I need to add any more context to that, since I have just done a whole episode on it. So I hope you've enjoyed this episode. Please do let me know by rating and reviewing the podcast. You can follow the podcast on Instagram and on TikTok at selfinterruptedpod. You can follow me personally at kit.costello on Instagram and on TikTok. You can follow the Substack at Kit Costello, and also it's Self-Interrupted with Kit Costello. I don't really know, Substack kind of confuses me a little bit, but just look up Self-Interrupted with Kit Costello, will come up. Also, it's in the description of this podcast episode. But other than that, I'm sending you so much love, as always, Kit.